And welcome back to the 757 at 6 here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Matt Hatfield here with you. Got a couple of special guests with us here on the program. We've got Ray Scott, the former NBA Coach of the Year, 1974 Detroit Pistons. He played for the Pistons, the Baltimore Bullets, the Virginia Squires. Wonderful career, over 11,000 career points in the NBA and ABA and multiple Hall of Fames. And, of course, we've also got our friend from Sports Inside and Out, the Legends of Sports. You know him as the former Norview great coach Charles Hatcher with us, and we'll begin with Charles here. Coach Hatcher, how are you?
Always. Matt, we're so proud again to have you teaming up with all the great legends of sports and our Retired Players Association legends, particularly those that made an impact on the state of Virginia in 757. And I want to let you know, too, you're on our national podcast as well as SoundCloud, Matt. You're getting famous. Everybody wants Matt. Hey, listen, if Pinocchio is there, I'm going to tell him that this is what I want to do. But listen, great, man. We are so happy to have Matt be a part of as well, and help our great legends be a part of the Matt Hatfield show there in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Ray, of course, is an old friend and one of the great players of knowledge in the league, as well as one of the great mainstays. You know, you can ask guys like if Wilt was around and some of the greats, they would say he's one of the cream of the crop for Philadelphia. And we're so happy to be a part of your show, my friend. Yeah.
Well, you're very kind. You're too kind, Coach Hatcher. I mean, I don't know about famous. I mean, when we're talking to people like yourself and Charlie Scott and Leroy Keys, and, of course, we now bring in Ray Scott, as we mentioned, the all-time great NBA, ABA Coach of the Year. We say hello to Ray. Ray, how's life treating you these days?
Well, life as well as it possibly could be in a pandemic for an octogenarian like myself. You know, they take us older guys and they kind of hide us away because they don't want us to take any risks. And so we're wearing our mask and our gloves and singing the Star Spangled Banner. So we're just enjoying life and things are well. I've become probably the #1 fan in the world of Netflix.
Oh, okay. Before we get into basketball topics, we're going to take a stroll down memory lane here with Ray Scott and Coach Hatcher, I'm sure. But give me what's the Netflix show of choice or a couple of shows of choice? Give me something to watch here.
Well, #1 would be, I would say, The Crown, which is depicts things that I didn't know about in England and Europe. And, of course, you want to watch all of the stuff on the Second World War. It's such interesting information there coming into the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration and how they dealt with the Second World War with respect to Stalin and Churchill and all of the things that they had to endure. And I just found out so many things, finding out that France was taken over without a shot being fired, the forays into Poland and Poland being split in two between the Russians and the Germans. I mean, it's just such great history. So I've really become a history buff over this period because of Netflix and what they offer with respect to that period in our lives, from the Roaring 20s into the First World War into the Second World War.
Hey, Matt, I'd like to tell you also that looks like Earl Plummer's Dreammaker film is going to be coming out pretty soon. We're looking very forward to it. Of course, Ray is going to be one of the promotion critiquers for NBC.
Oh, nice.
So it looks like that might be coming up, and we're really happy about that. And we're going to definitely keep you front and center on that because it might be airing during the summer months on NBC. We'll find out. That means it'll be right there in Norfolk, Virginia area, there at NBC in Norfolk. So we look forward to having Ray Scott, the Dreammakers of the reunion of the Virginia Squires, the great guys coming back. You even have the late Matty Taylor and George Gervin on that. But you were right there, Matt, so you'll be able to see Ray and all the greats, Charlie, George Gervin, and Julius Ervin, and all the guys coming back. I think it'll be a great program and history for the Tidewater area and the state of Virginia, particularly in heading up something like you, because you'll be front and center for any type of interviews we got down there with the cats.
Well, Well, that's awesome to hear. And I mean, Ray, it sounds like just with his wealth of knowledge, he could have his own The Ray Scott Show with basketball, sports, and history there. And I'm sure Coach Hatcher with us too with that. But looking at this, Ray, I'm interested here to start going back to those basketball days. I could spend all day with you. But drafted by the Pistons there in the 1961 NBA draft, 4th overall. What do you remember about that day and that time?
Well, that day to me was a spectacular day because I was on a subway in New York. I was going up to the Bronx to play in a tournament, and in New York they have the early evening newspaper, and I believe it was if memory serves, it was the New York Post. So after the 8 team going to 9 team, because 9 teams in 61, because the Chicago Packers were added, and so the Chicago Packers made the number 1 pick, Walt Bellamy. And when I picked up the newspapers, I saw that. I said, "Oh, the Packers drafted Walt Bellamy." And then the next pick was New York, and New York, which had shown some interest in me, but I knew that they had a player out of St. Bonaventure by the name of Tom Stiff. And they drafted Tom Stiff, who was a New York kid and just a great leader. And then next was the Cincinnati Royals, and I said, "Oh, well, maybe they might look at me." And so the Cincinnati Royals drafted Larry Siegfried from that great Ohio State team with Jerry Lucas and John Havlicek. So I said, "Oh, well, that takes care of that." And then I said, "Well, that's it for me." And all of a sudden, lo and behold, I see the Detroit Pistons. And I had been talked to by Earl Lloyd, their chief scout and assistant coach, and he had come to Philadelphia, and he had said to me, "We're going to draft you." And I never thought more about it because I didn't think that I would be there. Well, lo and behold, I was. And Earl Lloyd kept his word, and I was a Detroit Piston in April of 1961, and I'm still here. I haven't kicked out of Michigan yet. I came here from South Philly and made Michigan my home, and it's just great. It's been a great experience, and I love the state and loved just being here. It's just been a great relationship, not only with the Detroit Pistons, but with the state of Michigan.
That's awesome, and named one of the 30 greatest Pistons of all time. We're talking with Ray Scott and, of course, Coach Charles Hatcher here on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1, reminiscing with the former Virginia Squire, Detroit Piston great. And Ray, and I'm sure Coach Hatcher can chime in on this after you as well. People know about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with the sky hook, but if you go back and watch Ray Scott play, you'll see some great big sweeping hook shots, even over the legendary Elgin Baylor. You'll see some games where he had 27 points, 26 rebounds, 6 assists. Tell me the secret about that big sweeping hook shot there, Ray.
Well, I didn't have a big sweeping hook. I was a scuffler. Listen, I've seen that. They showed me score one basket on Elgin, but if they showed the baskets that Elgin scored on me, you would be here for an hour after 2. So, but coming out of Philly and playing against Wilt Chamberlain, you do develop a repertoire of shots. Philadelphia is just a great place to learn to play basketball. But, when you get your skill level and then you get to the professionals who you've watched and seen for so long, you have to bring your game. I mean, I learned that early on because I was against Elgin Baylor, Bob Pettit, Dolph Shays, Johnny Green, Willie Knowles, Jerry Lucas, Jack Twyman. Every night I tell people I didn't get much sleep because every night was a nightmare for me, for the guy that I was going to have to guard the next day. So, but I was lucky and fortunate to play 9 years in the NBA and then blessed to wind up with the Virginia Squires, which I tell people, Matt, it was the happiest 2 years of my life in basketball was spent in Virginia.
Really? Why is that?
I think, it goes back to leadership, the type of environment that Mr. Foreman created for us in Virginia. As respected athletically, we lived well, we lived in nice places, we ate in nice places. We started at Old Dominion, but we still had the Hampton Roads Coliseum. We played in Richmond, we played in Roanoke. It was just a unique experience, being a regional team as opposed to home city team. Mm-hmm. And so I got to know a lot of Virginia, and I got to know a lot of people, people like Coach Hatcher, people that I'm friends with in Virginia till this day. So Virginia was that unique place, but it was a place that had a guy coming in, had a superstar like Charlie Scott, but our leader was really Fatty Taylor. Fatty was that guy that just pulled everybody together. And then there was my roommate Neil Johnson. We actually came in together. I came from the Bullets. He came from Phoenix. He played for the Phoenix Suns. And so we knew each other professionally beforehand, but we became roommates and best friends. We're best friends again to this day, going back to my Virginia roots. So Virginia was just such a, I don't know, it's one of those places where everything just came together and worked for me. And my mother told me before she passed, she said, son, if you had continued to play for the Virginia Squires, we would all be living in Virginia right now. That's how much we loved it.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And I lived in Virginia Beach. I lived in the Boulevard. So I was kind of, in that dividing line between Norfolk and Virginia and the Tidewater area, Chesapeake Bay, and then I was in Hampton or Newport News. I mean, you have something very special there, and some very, very special people. And when we came back in 2014, when Coach had us all come back and have the reunion, it was, I brought my wife, and we've been married 40 years, but she did not experience Virginia. And she experienced it from that Virginia Squire perspective, and she just thought it was phenomenal, and she could see why I felt the way that I did.
Yeah, and he took Charlie Scott's suite, and Charlie was so
He
said, hey, Charlie, I gave it to her. I said, Charlie, you got to go, man. You got to go.
Charlie still doesn't speak to me.
He's still home, man, and he still talks about it. I'm going to come back again, man, but hey, Hatch, I'm staying by myself now.
You got to tell Hatch. You got to tell Matt that story of how I came into the lobby and what you did.
Well, yeah, let me hear that. Go ahead. Give me that story, Coach Hatcher.
No, I ain't going anywhere. Ray came in with Jennifer. They was coming in. I said, "Hey, good guy. Hey, what's up, Ray?" And Charlie just came down, and we said, "Where can I stay?" And the manager of the hotel there was there. And Earl Foreman, me and Earl and Phyllis, and who else was down there? I think Shice was there.
Yeah.
They were talking and says, well, he said, Ray said, how's the places here? I said, great. Accommodation is good, man. I'm happy to be back. Everybody's getting ready. The camera was there. And Charlie said, well, where's Ray staying? I said, on the top floor. He said, oh, okay, he's staying up. Well, my room's up on his suite. Where's he staying? And the manager said, I got two, Mr. Scott, do you want both keys? And Charlie said, you gave him my room. I said, no, the manager did. He said, no, Ray, you stole my room. I said, and the whole time there, and every time he talked about, what else you going to give him? What else you going to give him? What else you going to, that's all. And he still talks about that today.
I didn't know he did, but he hasn't talked to me about it.
And I'll tell you, he said, you gave him the All-Star game. I heard you gave him the All-Star game when y'all came with Ralph Sampson. Now you done gave him my room. You never asked me to come down in Norfolk from North Carolina for the guy. I said, wait a minute, man, that's Ray Scott. You got to get Ray, man. Come on, take care of a boy. He said, I ain't talking to you no more.
That's great.
It was a lot of fun, really.
It was a lot of fun, though. It's a lot of fun, Matt, in those locker room situations.
Ralph Sampson's first debut, he was like a little boy.
And he was supposed to play against Moses Malone. Moses was a no-show.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean that the ACC All-Stars would not be without competition, because the guy who showed up was Artis Gilmore.
Artis Gilmore, A-Train showed up. It was a lot of fun,
So we had Adrian Dantley and Lucas and Mark Ivoroni and Buck Williams.
Buck Williams.
It was a great dance. It was a great game to play. And a very good game for 10,000 people, Matt. We sold out the scope.
How about that? That's a really neat story.
And I think someone said that was the first time in history that a 10,000-seat stadium had been sold out for an All-Star game in the summer.
Yeah.
That summer.
Yeah, sure was. That was very nice.
Oh, my, that's pretty cool. All right, we're back with more here with Ray Scott, the ABA and NBA legend. More than 11,000 career points, over 7,900 rebounds. Virginia Squires, Baltimore Bullets, Detroit Pistons, where he was the NBA Coach of the Year in 1974. And our pal, Coach Charles Hatcher from Norview High School. Check out the podcast. You'll get some great stories there. It's Sports Inside and Out, Legends of Sports radio show. You can find it on Apple Podcasts and so much more as they join us here for more on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1. I'm curious to get both of you guys' thoughts here, Ray and Coach Hatcher, on this. And it's something that's been discussed here lately, I think, with all these different documentaries that are out on some of the pros and past players. And now you get the different generations of basketball players. I even got into a discussion with a good friend of mine the other day in support of some of the old legends. I mean, people make the argument that, those guys back in the day. Take the 62 NBA MVP race where you had Russell, you had Chamberlain, you had Elgin Baylor, you had Oscar Robertson, you had Jerry West finishing fifth. And people will say, well, they wouldn't put up those mega numbers in these days, and Russell only shot 44% for his career, and these guys only played with 9 teams in the league then. But I always say back to him, there was no three-point shot then, and a guy like Russell's statistical value is diminished in a lot of ways because of no charting of block shots. He would have averaged about 8.5 blocks a game back then. So let me hear you guys' perspective on that, and go ahead first, Ray Scott.
I agree with Russell that, when you stop and think about basketball as it was played with 9 teams, 10 to 12 men to a team, that's a pretty low percentage of basketball players, which means that you're probably drawing the best basketball players you can possibly get. When you go up to Michael Jordan's era, when Michael and Russell were playing golf, and Michael made the statement to Russell that his era was easier. And Russell said, there's no way. Not when you have the smaller percentage of players in the league. And with you had a much larger percentage in the league. And let me tell you what I mean. When you made your game-winning pass for the championship in the championship game to Paxson, Russell said, that shot wouldn't have counted. Right. And Paxson said, what do you mean it wouldn't? Jordan said, what do you mean it wouldn't have counted? He said, it wouldn't have counted because Paxson would have been up in the stands when we played watching the game. He wouldn't even be on the floor. And nothing against Paxson, but it was so competitive because what people forget when they make those statements is that the NBA in those 8 and 9 years were comprised of All-Americans.
Yes.
Everybody that made a team was an All-American. And it was the NBA was built on as an All-American league. So therefore, only the top level players were getting to play and getting to play in the NBA. And so a lot of guys don't recognize that. They don't know the history of the NBA. They don't know that George Mikan, when he was picked, he was the number 1 player in America at DePaul University. And he was the first big-time player, and that's when the Lakers began winning their titles in Minneapolis before they moved to Los Angeles. And so all of the players, when you walked out on the floor, all of the players, I know me as a player, everybody was an All-American. And that came across to me quite clearly. So when people talk about today, I tell them quite clearly, every player that you're seeing on an NBA floor now is not an All-American. So it's a different time, but the times are what they are, and all you can do as a human is go out in the time that God gives you on this planet and do the very best you can do, and at the end of the day, that's it.
And the same thing, too, Matt. Physicality, it was a physical league. You came off there bruised and bloody from your head to your toe. And even with that, you could hold. You could get a 1 second or 2 second hold. You can hold a guy, and the guy hit you. You can knock him through the bleachers if you want to, and just say it's a foul. So there's no such thing as the physicality was. Oh my great! And they changed the rule of the NBA because of Wilt. Yeah. You couldn't do nothing. They changed the whole league because of Wilt Chamberlain. So, it was a much more physical and much more powerful. The guys could not do the things they do now no way, shape, or form or fashion, because the coach will tell you if he shoots another one, and if you don't knock him in the stands, you benched. Yeah, I mean, it went to those type of things. So yeah, guys specifically that played with Ray that would come into a game to take a guy like Michael out. So it was a very interesting thing, and my career that I played professionally overseas was specifically due to a era in Philadelphia that we came through the Baker League and the Rucker. They made me a little bit more rougher in order to get a job when I got cut from the league to go to Europe to have a career of physicality. You know, so it came right back. But today's game, oh my gracious, somebody called him a game of teetotalers. I don't know who said that, but if I wanted, I can't say the real word. But anyway, we gotta deal with that. But it was something to behold back then, because you bought your lunch, no resting, no taking some time off. You didn't play, you did not get paid.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I feel like it's unfair to the greats of the 50s, 60s, 70s eras, because, I mean, I think you adapt and evolve if you're an all-time great player, and those numbers that guys like Chamberlain and Russell put up, that was without, as I mentioned, the three-point shot, and you guys said the physicality was different then, and I think players of this era could do some great things then, but you can never really compare, you can never really know, which is greater. I think we got to take the players that did what they did and their accomplishments at face value for sure. And Ray, I want to get back to you here, and this can kind of be a combo platter question for you with the ABA days with the Squires and your NBA days and even your coaching days. I mean, you coached the 50 great Dave Bing. You coached Bob Lanier, an all-star MVP, a Hall of Famer. You had some great players that you not only played with but coached there. I mean, I was thinking about this just a little while ago. Like, it probably changes from month to month almost. Your ABA days, Squires, your NBA days, the best players that you played with, you coached against, went against. Give me kind of your take and some of the things that stick out from some of those great times.
Well, the great players and the great people of sports always stand out because they're trailblazers. So in my opinion, you will never have another John L. Sullivan, for instance, the first heavyweight champion of the world, because he's the first guy to succeed at that level of being the very best at what he did. Or you'll never have a Jim Thorpe that won all of the gold medals in the Olympics. Or you'll never have a Red Grange, who was an All-American at Illinois. These guys came out of the early 1900s and roaring 20s. But as you progress and you look at the trailblazers that existed, the Jackie Robinsons, the Wilt Chamberlains, those types of guys, you have such appreciation of their skills because they are the first that ever did it. And in my opinion, when people talk baseball, and I love baseball, but there'll never be another Babe Ruth because he was the guy that blazed that trail. So trailblazers interest me greatly, and excellence interests me greatly, but their excellence is controlled by eras. And it's like people argue all the time about Chamberlain and Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan was a terror on the basketball.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the greatest basketball players that ever played, but you can't just simply put him down as the best that ever played, because then you're taking a guy like Wilt Chamberlain or a Bill Russell or a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you're throwing everything they did out the window, because they too accomplished things that just will never be, and some things that are incomparable, as they say. For instance, Bill Russell was on an NBA team that won 8 straight NBA titles.
It's crazy.
And he had 11 championship rings.
And a total of 11. And you stop and you think, you go, 8 straight, my goodness. And I was there in that time, and it was not a cakewalk for them. They had to play. They had to go out and play 100 games a year. Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points a game, scored 100 points in a game, had 55 rebounds in a game, has 25,000 rebounds. Nobody's even come close to that. So when you take these things in hand, and then you hear people say, well, the guy won 6 championships. Well, 6 championships were not won by the guy. 6 championships are won by a team.
Yes.
Teams play sports, not and except for the individual sports, teams play sports and win these titles. Not, Russell won 11 championships. Russell didn't win 11 anything without Tommy Heinsohn and Havlicek and Cousy and Sharman and Sam Jones titles. So I don't agree with that. But when I chronically look at what a player did and chronicle that, I look at where he was in his era. Was he the best? And what his accomplishments were. And I can't argue with Wilt Chamberlain setting the standard like the Babe did with 60 home runs, or Jim Brown did with 9 seasons of over 1,000 yards. I mean, those are not things that you can just flip a switch on or sneeze at and say, oh, well, it's not that big a deal. It's incredible to prepare your body to do something to the point of excellence against every other human being is incredible, and it's very difficult, and people should be given credit for that.
I'm curious, too, with you, Ray, here. Who are the guys that you enjoy watching today? I mean, we can go back to some things here in the past as well, and we'll do that before we finish up here. But who are some of the players that you enjoy watching today, and the teams and coaches? Because you obviously have a keen eye for coaching, being the coach of the year that you were in 1974 with the Pistons. Who do you enjoy watching on the basketball floor nowadays?
Well, the greatest team I've ever seen in this era has been the San Francisco Warriors. They took the new game, which is the three-point game, and that game, the three-point game, is the game where they took the worst shot you could take in basketball, the one where the coach used to put you on the bench if you took it in a game. That shot has now become the glamour shot of basketball. And so you have the glamour shot being the three-point shot and the dunk. Well, the San Francisco Warriors took that new standard and took that new game and made it incredible to watch. And I love the Warriors and Curry, Thompson, Green, the teams that they've had, the Durant. They just play the game like a jazz combo. They are sweet to watch, and they are as pretty to watch, in my opinion, as the old Boston Celtics. When Heisen, Havlicek, Sam Jones, Casey Jones, Bill Russell, that team they were like a jazz operation. Well, the San Francisco Warriors are. The individual that stands out in my mind, because where he goes, teams win, is LeBron James. I love him. I love the way he plays. I love his unselfishness. I love his leadership. I think today, he's that guy that I want to turn on the television and watch. And of course, in my heart, I will miss Kobe Bryant. May he rest in heaven. But I must say that and tell the truth, I was not as big a Kobe Bryant fan because I didn't think he made the other 4 guys as good as they could have been, like the great players that I had seen in the past, a la an Oscar Robertson or Magic Johnson, where they orchestrated the floor. And Michael in Chicago really had that orchestration with his team. As great as he was, they had great role players, and people forget that Horace Grant, who was a great part of their first 3 rings, was replaced by Dennis Rodman, who was a great part of their next 3 rings. So they fulfilled their role players and had great role players and Hall of Fame type role players in Chicago. And so teams like that are fun to watch because all of the players are effective on the floor, and it's just where they are and what they can do on a given night. But the game itself, and there are people that disparage the game because of the three-point shot, but I'm just waiting and enjoying the growth of the game in this new era.
Great. Well, last 2 for you, and I could talk with you all day, and we appreciate the time. We're talking with Ray Scott, the ABA and NBA great, who played with the Pistons, the Virginia Squires, Baltimore Bullets, first African-American NBA Coach of the Year back in 1974, and our pal, Coach Charles Hatcher from Sports Inside and Out, Legends of Sports Radio Show. You know him from Norview High School in Norfolk. He's a 757 grade, and it is the 757 at 6 here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Ray, I mean, so many players that you played with, went against, coached there. I mentioned Bing and Lanier there. Then we know about the Squires greats like Charlie Scott, Dr. J, and so many. Is there anybody from your time there in that era that you feel like their name doesn't get brought up enough? And it could be more than one guy as one of the greats of all time, where they're underappreciated to an extent.
Elgin Baylor.
Okay.
Elgin Baylor.
Why's that?
Elgin Baylor was a phenomenal, a 6'5", 6'6" player that you've ever seen because he played as a big man. But he also played as a ball handler. He led his team in assists, but he led his team in scoring. And he led his team in rebounding. Elgin was probably at the forefront of Connie Hawkins Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, and Dr. J. That group is a standalone group when it comes to professional basketball.
Well, you know this from your playing and coaching days, too. I feel like guys like him, I mean, you look at his numbers, they're just staggering. Any conversation, and you're talking at any level of sport, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, if you're talking about the greats that never win championships, if you don't begin with names like Elgin Baylor and Karl Malone and John Stockton in basketball and Dan Marino in football, you're sadly mistaken, because those guys accomplished so much more than some of the guys that were role players on championship teams, but to this day, people bring it up as the first thing, and I don't think that's really fair. I'm sure you probably feel the same way.
I feel the same way. That's not relevant in terms of assessing a player. Remember, players play on teams. If I played for a team and I got two guards and can't make two with a pencil, how does that, what do you think? How do you think that makes me feel if I'm averaging 25? Boy, those guys, they really suck, So that goes to the franchise, being able to put the team together. So that's why a lot of franchises like the Celtics and like the Bulls and like the Lakers, they're given a lot of credit because they put teams together. As the three of the greatest players that ever played in the NBA were never drafted, that was never drafted by their team, is the Lakers. The three greatest centers in the history of the Lakers was never drafted by the Lakers. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, and Shaquille O'Neal.
That's a good point.
They got all three of them from other teams. So that's what I mean about putting a team together. That's why it's so important. Those Laker teams would not have been you can't convince me that those teams would have won championships without those three guys.
Coach Hatcher, it's probably refreshing for you to hear this. I mean, have you heard it from so many different greats that you've had on your podcast and in chatting with over the years? Because there's so many talk shows today now and social media. It feels like poison at times, but really these are the conversations that should be taking place more often, don't you think?
Oh, no question about it, and it's good when you're friends of those. These are the guys that not only I am very close and dear to, but Sam and Ray and Julius and guys, and be able to have a stepson like Dominique Wilkins to be able to make an impact in the league as he did. It's always been, it's always tremendous. I got a backbone, a program coordinator, a lovely lady, Maxilla, that really puts things in perspective when it comes to where we're doing. So, we make sure that we bring from our show a platform for the greatest people that help make the game, is what we call it. Make the game of what it is now. It just so happened that I played with and against and become friends with these guys from Ray to, to the other guys, Oscar and everybody else. I'm very, very blessed to be not only a part of the Retired Players Association and be the voice of the legends of sports, but a platform. And I think the same thing you do there, and a great opportunity as well, is you're bringing the best and the creams of the history of the game to those in the Hampton Roads area that need to hear it. And we're very happy to be a conduit of our guys directly to use their dear friend and cohort there on a fantastic show that's being done in the Tidewater area. They are very pleased to be able to have you, and we're happy to give you any content that we have, so that's why we let you know. And all the listeners there in the Hampton Roads area know these type of projects that we got coming to the Hampton Roads area, the East Coast, and around the country. You could hear all these things first right there on one of the great shows, I think, sports shows there in the Hampton Roads area with Matt. So we're happy to support you. We love what you're doing, man, and I think now is about time to get out of here before I start crying.
Well, we thank you for your time. I got one last question for Ray, and I could talk with you guys all day, and I greatly appreciate the time here. Ray, I mean, so many amazing accomplishments and achievements in your career. You're in the Michigan Sports, Brooklyn Sports, Hampton Roads Sports Hall of Fame, and as I mentioned, the first African-American NBA Coach of the Year. I want to know what that honor meant to you, and what's the most special in everything that you've done in your great career?
Matthew, so much of all of your career is special when you go back in time. But that one moment for me was when I stood before a sold-out Cobo Arena in a city that I'd come to, and think about this, in 1961, in a league that was an All-American Players League. I was not an All-American. I had played 3 years at Allentown with the Allentown Jets and went to the University of Portland. And I'm standing in 1974 Scott's house as we're getting ready to play the Chicago Bulls in a 7-game series, and they give me this trophy for the Coach of the Year. And I just said, oh, my word, I'm a kid from a third-floor walk-up in Philadelphia. I didn't know anything about basketball or having that dream, because it was not a dream in those days, because baseball, until I was 10 years old, they were not integrated. So it was not a dream. So for me to be standing there in 1974, to me, illustrated what you can do when you have a lot of people that believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself, even when you don't know who you are, but people that just keep loving you and believing in you. And that's why I said to you, Matthew, it culminated for me in the 2 years that I spent in Virginia playing for the Earl Foreman-led Virginia Squires, and playing with Charlie Scott, and playing with Julius Erving, and playing with Fatty Taylor, and representing an organization that had someone to look forward to having a George Gervin. That's a great organization, and I'm so proud to have had that association. I still love Virginia. I still get a tingle when people say something about Virginia Beach, because I have so many great memories of being there and so many great people that I know, like I said, that are still there. So that was my greatest time, just standing on a 94 by 50 court. I'm telling you, when they gave me that at the center court, that was Coach of the Year, that just about did it. That where I said, oh my, you can just beam me up, Scotty.
Well, such a pleasure to speak with you tonight and with Coach Hatcher. Ray Scott, the great Hall of Famer, Hampton Roads sports, Brooklyn sports, Michigan sports, more than 11,000 career points, over 7,900 rebounds in his illustrious career. Allentown Jets, as you heard, Detroit Pistons, Baltimore Bullets, and Virginia Squires, and the NBA Coach of the Year in 1974, the Detroit Pistons, and our friend Coach Charles Hatcher, Sports Inside and Out, the Legends of Sports. We'll be doing much more with him and his podcast associations. Fellas, such a great time to talk with you both. You both be well, stay safe, and we'll keep in touch, all right?
You be well, Matthew. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
You got it, guys. Thank you so much.